Now, serve me a ball with heavy backspin, why can I still power loop it? It's because with a sharp snap. Today, we're going to talk about spin. In table tennis, wouldn't you agree that spin is the most difficult part of the game? Why do some players hit a plateau and can't seem to improve? It's because their ability to both generate and handle spin is weak. The first is generating spin, for example, serving with heavy spin, pushing with more backspin, or looping with more topspin. This is what we call actively generating spin. The second is handling spin. This is your ability to deal with whatever spin your opponent puts on the ball, especially on their serves. But these two skills are common weaknesses for amateur players. The first weakness is an inability to generate spin, your serves, pushes, and loops aren't spinny enough. The second is an inability to handle spin, you misread serves, can't block loops, and struggle to lift heavy backspin. Mastering spin is all about having solid fundamentals. For instance, I could watch a veteran player with a fantastic hook serve and copy it instantly. That's because developing great spin takes a tremendous amount of practice. It's a skill that has to be trained. First, let's talk about generating spin. We've discussed the concept of brushing the ball many times, so why do so many players still struggle to get good friction? I've summarized it into 4 reasons, see which one applies to you. First, a stiff hand and wrist. At the moment of contact, you want to brush the ball, but because your hand is stiff, your friction is dull and slow, failing to generate acceleration. A stiff hand results in hitting the ball, a relaxed hand results in a soft, controlled touch. You're not staying relaxed enough. That's the first point. The second problem is not knowing how to create friction. This means that at the point of contact, you never feel your fingers applying force. You are just going through the motions, without feeling your fingers driving the racket face to create spin. The third issue is incorrect timing on contact. For example, brushing too late after the ball has already left the racket, or brushing too early before making contact, are both ineffective. The fourth problem is a lack of power in your hand, which is especially common in serves. You know you need to accelerate the racket head, but the ball just isn't spinny because your physical limit is too low. You lack hand strength. Players, hand grip strengtheners are very useful. Get one and use it in your spare time, but do not train your wrist directly. Training the wrist alone can easily lead to injury. Focus on your fingers, build that gripping strength. Let's address these 4 points one by one. First, let's solve the problem of stiffness. For those who are too stiff, here are 2 approaches. First, to relax your arm, simply let your forearm hang down naturally. When you hold your forearm up, it naturally tenses up. When you let it hang down, your shoulder, elbow, and entire arm will relax. So, what should the feeling of holding the racket be? Try this next time you have a racket. Grip it with your maximum strength. Now, relax to about half of that maximum strength. From that halfway point, relax by half again, so you're using only 20 to 30% of your power. The feeling should be just holding the racket, not a deep, tight grip. Just enough so it doesn't fall out of your hand. If you always have a deep, tight grip, you can only hit the ball, not brush it. When should you be this relaxed? You need to stay relaxed all the way until the very moment of contact, at which point your grip pressure should instantly go from 25 to 30% to 100%. That's how you accelerate for friction. So, from the ready position through the backswing, your grip is at 30%. As you swing forward before contact, it's still 30%. At the exact moment of contact, it's 100%. There must be a sudden, sharp change. The greater the contrast between your relaxed backswing and your explosive acceleration at contact, the spinnier the ball will be. This also applies to power. The more relaxed, the more explosive, the greater your power. The second point for friction is using your fingers for power. Let me ask you, which is stronger, your fingers or your arm? Obviously, your arm. Friction is about accelerating without muscling the ball. But we often try to use brute force. What is brute force? It's arm strength. The harder you try to brush with your arm, the stiffer you get, and the less spin you generate. This leads to a stiff, powerless attempt at friction that doesn't work. The very essence of creating friction is to make the racket face rotate quickly. It's not about hitting through the ball. To get spin, I need my racket face to turn faster. If my motion is slow, the ball won't be spinny because the rotation is too slow. You'll get a little bit of spin, but not much. If you can snap it with a quick rotation, the ball will be very spinny. The faster the speed, the more spin you get. So what does fast speed mean? When I brush the ball like this, it's the racket itself that imparts friction onto the ball. We're not talking about the speed of the entire stroke, but the concentrated speed at the moment of friction. If your whole motion is slow, you won't generate much spin. The frequency of the motion is too slow, so even if there's some brushing, the ball isn't very spinny. So how can you make it spinnier? With the same motion, all I have to do is accelerate it, and the ball gets spinny. See? A quick acceleration, and the ball spins. Let me ask you, aren't there a lot of pimples players in amateur leagues? What do pimples fear most? Long, short, and medium pips all fear heavy spin. Because a spinny ball will slip on their rubber surface. Inverted rubber users also fear heavy spin, which makes generating spin the most cost-effective tactic for amateurs. You can play consistently while also making your opponent uncomfortable. Hitting for power is high risk, high reward. Adding spin is low risk, high reward. Let's do a test. We'll time it for 5 seconds. I'll do the forehand brushing motion with my fingers, and you do it with your forearm. Ready, go. Counting. 37 times. Now, your turn. Yes, use your forearm to brush. Ready, go. Counting. 23. It's 23 versus 37. If you used your upper arm, it would probably be around 10 to 15 times. So, is there any part of your body that's faster than your fingers? No. Why do I emphasize using fingers? Because for a light racket, your 5 fingers can easily manipulate it. If the racket weighed 10 or 20 kilos, my fingers wouldn't be able to move it. I'd have to rely on my forearm for acceleration because my fingers wouldn't be strong enough for that weight. But a table tennis racket is light, only about 100 plus grams. So, what's fastest? The fingers are fastest. And what's the benefit of speed? Spin. The faster, the spinnier. Your fingers have more than enough power to handle the weight of the blade and make the racket face rotate. Since your fingers have the highest frequency, they can generate the fastest motion. Therefore, you must use your fingers to add friction. This will make your shots incredibly spinny. Remember, friction is about acceleration, not brute force. Now, let me explain how to use your fingers to generate force. When I first started playing, I had no finger power because my forehand grip was fundamentally wrong. I realize it was a grip problem now, but back then, nobody told me that was the issue. My grip was too loose in the web of my hand, and my middle finger wasn't properly braced against the shoulder of the blade. So I could never feel it engage. So, first, if you want to use your fingers, make sure each finger is in the correct position. Lock the web of the hand into the shoulder of the racket. Your fingers need to be in close contact with the blade, not necessarily squeezing it hard, but fully connected. Second, what does finger power actually mean? Imagine your wrist is level. Now imagine it drop down. This up and down motion is typically controlled by the wrist joint. But your fingers are just held together. For a push shot, when you move your wrist downwards, it shouldn't be the wrist acting on its own. Instead, it's your index finger and the web of your thumb, for both grips, that should actively push downwards, which in turn drives the wrist. When your fingers lead the downward motion, you get maximum speed. Conversely, for topspin, the wrist should not rotate upwards on its own. For both shakehand and penhold grips, power on the forehand side comes from the index and middle fingers. So which finger does what? Your index and middle fingers should drive forward and upward with explosive acceleration. The biggest problem with using only the wrist, and I had this problem too, is that you can injure it when practicing shots like the backhand flick. More importantly, when you just flick your wrist, you can't control the ball's trajectory. The range of motion is too large and lacks the precision of finger control. If all your fingers apply pressure at once, you're not really using them for finesse. You need to feel your fingers working independently, with a clear division of labor. When hitting a forehand loop, my middle finger must push upward against the blade. If I push forward with it instead, the racket face becomes too closed. Using the middle finger to drive upward feels most natural. Using the index finger to drive forward feels most natural. You see, they have different jobs. When all fingers squeeze together, that's just gripping the racket. Only when you use your fingers individually, with one or two as the primary force, will your racket face have the most feel and generate the fastest spin. For penhold, this means concentrating the force in your middle and ring fingers. Why is your penhold forehand often better than our shake hand? Because we only have one finger supporting the back, while you have three. With 3 fingers supporting my forehand, of course I have more power. That's why I don't understand penholders who curl their fingers on the back. You're wasting a huge advantage. You have to spread them out to properly support the racket and generate force. Another question, do you use your fingers for a forehand drive? The answer is no. A drive is a hitting-based stroke. If you use your fingers, the racket face might shift. That small movement could make the ball go out. When you're hitting the ball, you need to grip the racket firmly. All 5 fingers should squeeze together for a solid impact. If you try to brush while hitting, you'll get an inconsistent loop drive, or the racket will wobble and you'll make an error. For a pure hit or block, you need stability. Grip it tight. So, how can you make your friction spinnier? Your middle finger should be pointing down. This is how you get the maximum range of motion for brushing the ball. If your middle finger is curled up with that grip, you'll only be able to push the ball. Your starting contact position is already my follow-through position. If my follow-through looks like your initial contact, you have no room left to generate spin. Of course the ball won't be spinny. It's like my serve, my backswing starts here, and I accelerate to here. If you start in my final position, you can only push the ball forward. When your index finger is pointing towards the ground on your forehand, you are in the correct position to create friction. See, index finger pointing down, then brush. If it points to the side, you lose the spin. It becomes a lifting or pushing motion, with no rotation. Now, serve me a ball with heavy backspin, why can I still power loop it? It's because with a sharp snap. Let me demonstrate a loop drive for you. What's the feeling? You first loop the ball up, and then you can hit through it. It's a combination of brushing and then hitting. If you try to hit it directly, the ball will go into the net. But if you loop it up first, you can then hit it. See? It works. You can even do a full power loop. Why? Because once I loop the ball, I can hit it flat. The key is the initial friction. Even with that much backspin, this is possible. However, this shot is not very consistent. It's better to loop with more control. The point is to show you that even a very spinny ball can be flat hit after the initial loop, because your topspin has already neutralized the backspin. The opponent's spin has been cancelled out by your own friction. After that, you can treat it as a regular topspin ball. You can hit it or loop it as you wish. If you want a spinny serve, a spinny loop, a spinny push, or if you want to handle spin, you must rely on your fingers. If you can do what others can't, your spin will stand out. If everyone else uses their fingers and you don't, that's the difference between you and a high-level player.